And 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 we're live. Look at
We are
that.
live.
It's another Wednesday night, and we had big thunderstorms come through, and I was kind of going through here, and man, we've already got tech questions, man.
Well,
Look
good,
at that.
good. We actually have some tech questions for Wednesday night tech talk. I can do that.
Right? That's
I
what
have
it's
to
about.
fast. I have to fast. I can't no eating after 8 o'clock, so I'm getting my glass of wine in right now.
Oh, for me, it's tea. I'm a
Oh
teetotaler.
well, I have to do a glass. This is it. I mean, this is nothing, right, for a glass of wine. But I have to do red wine every night to bring my HDL cholesterol up to balance out my LDL, which is the bad stuff.
Oh,
So, yeah.
nice. Well,
Yeah.
I've been exercising so much that it's hard to bring my heart rate back up. You know, it's like 48, 56 beats per minute. Sometimes I stand up and I get I get the free one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so let's run on down. We got Tom Brown, and we'll come back around and get all these questions. We got Aaron, lots of Tom. I'm going to move right on through. We got A Cove, D150. Turbo Tom 416, 2 Hacks Garage. Wow, guys are in here. Awesome. We got Bill, mostly all parts and rust. Patrick there. And we got Rick, Patrick. Oh, we got the Creamy Beaver and Patrick. And I'm excited. We're going to be 1 minute into it, and we're going to be getting our first tech question. Tom Brown, Shane could come over to Dallas's Mr. Rotter's neighborhood house, then do a behind-the-scenes look at the TCI factory like Mr. Rogers did with the canning. There we go. Canning plant. The Cream of Beaver could be the trolley. What do you think about that?
Do I have to? I'm the one that would have to film that then, right?
Yeah, and you would have to come down and see me at this place.
Yeah. Well, and it's in Mississippi, right? So
Yeah,
in
up in
Ashland.
Mississippi.
I don't.
Ashland,
We would definitely have to just record it and then upload it because you cannot stream live from that place.
No,
It is
they
like
don't
a
have stopper.
black hole of cellular
phone.
activity.
Anything activity. Yeah, that's right.
If you've ever been to the Ashland, Mississippi plant for TCI, it is literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
You drive from nothing but fields and trees around you to this plant. So,
Pretty much. But what I like about it though is that it does have that. It reminds me of kind of like, in San Diego. I always revert back to San Diego. That's what I know. But like Ramona or like Julian, like in between those two spots, there was like San Isabel.
Yeah.
And so that's how I see Ashland, Mississippi is like San Isabel. Like it's literally a cross street, and that's about it. And same with Ashland. It's got like a town square and a stop sign, and that's about it. But
Yeah.
I think San Isabel got a stoplight now. So
Well, I like to go into Julian for the apple pies.
right, and then
Yeah.
now, and Tom Brown's got another one just for you, Mr. Dallas. I'll let you read it.
Oh man. Okay, Dallas. What sizes of Rochester 2V carbs came on the Buicks, and can you hook up a 700R4 TV cable to one? I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. I think they're 500 CFM. I believe is what the two barrels were for GM, and the two I think it's called the 2GC or the Rochester two barrel. But I think it's the 500 CFM. If not, they're like 450, but they're pretty big. Now, what I do know, can you hook up a 200 R or a 700 R4 to that? There was likely, I'll bet there was very few of those two barrels that you're familiar with that came on the 70s and early 80s stuff that had a 700 R4 behind them. The 700 R4 was like introduced in like say 81, 2, 3, somewhere around there. And it would have probably been only in trucks at that point, and then Camaro and Firebird. And Camaro and Firebird were using crossfire fuel injection and TPI setups during that time frame. So I would say no, but you're in luck because a Quadrajet, if you buy a 1975 and later Quadrajet, virtually the base plate for them all is the same. All the way up through the end of the run. Even the computer controlled, the CCC Quadrajets had the same base plate. And if you can find one of those CCC carburetors off of like say an 87 Impala. They came on Pontiac Bonnevilles, Buick LeSabre. If you can find one of those off a 307, you can take the carburetor base plate and swap it onto any 75 and later Quadrajet. Now, if you have the 75 and later Quadrajet, I do like the 75, 6, and 7 model Quadrajet base plates because you can actually get to the idle air adjustment screws, and the other ones you got to dig out. You got to cut them open and pry all the aluminum out to get to the adjustment screws, and then it has no head on it really. There is a special tool for them.
It's got the D slot, isn't that the one?
It's got a square.
Yeah. It's got that little side on
yeah.
it. I always used to just cut it with the slot. That way you could put a
screwdriver on it. Yep.
Yeah, flathead.
What I found is the best is take that base plate, pull the entire linkage assembly rod out for the accelerator, right? And you slide it in the early one, and then you do your bushings. You replace your bushings while you're in there doing it, and then you bush that rod, the primary rod, because they're all going to need it anyway. And you have a good bushed rod with a later accelerator linkage assembly, and it will run a 204R, which is the same detent cable as a 700R4. So you can just use that base plate, and if you find it off a 307 Oldsmobile, the neatest thing about them is the Oldsmobile was the smart one when it came to making brackets for linkages. All the other ones had a specific linkage bracket that bolted to the intake manifold, and it was configured just for that combination. The Oldsmobile had a bracket that bolted to the back two holes of the Quadrajet, so you can take the linkage bracket with you. You can take the base plate, take the accelerator, and that one rod, slide it into a 75 and later Quadrajet, and voila, you have all of the good stuff on one Quadrajet carburetor. Now, I would recommend using a 76 and later because 75 had that weird third metering rod in it. That was for the adjustable part throttle. And it was just a 1 year only. They're worthless unless you're using them on the exact same calibration of what it was on. Yeah. So get a 76 and later, and then try to stick to a 76 through 77 or 8 base plate that has the adjustment screws. And you'll have all of the good stuff. Plus, on that Quadrajet that you take off the 307 Oldsmobile will have an electric choke, and you can swap that housing right onto your gas tube choke carburetor, and now you got electric choke. So you can build a pretty simple Quadrajet that works with the 700R4 really easy.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, awesome. I'm glad we got a person in here that knows the rock checkers, because to me they were just rock checkers.
I like the Quadrajets, dude. I do. They're a good carburetor, and the cool thing is you can put it on a 215 all the way up to the 500 cubic inch Cadillac. And I just never had anyone to show me how to work on them, and all the parts that I had for them, they were either broken, they were underwater, or they were on a boat, or they were never really something that was working, so I never really it's good to start off with something that works already to begin with.
Yeah, and I never had that. All right, Aaron's asking, I have header leaks now. I tried Road Silicone Trick, and it failed miserably. Now, look, a lot of people hate these, but I'm telling you, I live by these things on my Slant 6 because they are always moving around. It's called REMFlex, REM.
Oh, I love those things. I love those gaskets. That's all I use on the Buick stuff.
I'm telling you, they work. If you tell me what engine it is, Aaron, I'll send you a link for it. But yeah, it's called REMFlex, and they work incredibly. They have a steel core down the center, and then they have really soft
impregnated graphite on the outside.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, it is awesome.
But you can only use them once.
That's it.
Right?
Once they're on, that's it. You cannot take them back off.
Right. The other thing I found is if the bolts start to loosen up and fall out, just tighten them down more. The more you crush that thing, the better. You can actually, as long as you don't pull it off the surface, you can tighten them all down some more, and it'll actually continue to work.
Yeah, that's what I do on the Slant 6 is I'll do 10 foot-pounds on that, and then I'll run it and do a couple of heat cycles, and I'll just keep cranking them down 10 foot-pounds and just keep checking them, and then they'll finally get to a point where they don't move anymore, and then it stops leaking. So yeah, exactly. I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about. I was kind of going through here, but I missed something here. But he's talking about his leaks upstream. Keep on moving down.
Okay, surges until it warms up a little bit. Let's see.
Oh, he's Patrick's saying he put a Cometic MLS header gaskets. I've never tried those. Have you had those yet?
No, but I'll tell you what I have used that's amazing. If you guys haven't used the copper header gaskets or exhaust manifold gaskets or
done
anything
those.
like that,
Yeah.
those things are amazing because you can
Yeah.
literally use them over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
And they never blow out.
And you don't even have to put any goop on them. No
No.
yucky pucky. They just go right on. Yeah, as long as you have a good flange, it's not like one of those blackjack headers. You know what I mean? They're $99,
Yeah.
you know. They'll see pretty good. Yeah, looks like yes, right there. It is, yeah, Rem Flex, but it's one word, Rem Flex. So yeah. And I don't put any yucky pucky on it or anything. No massage oils. You just literally put it on and it's good to go. And here's the thing though, is that getting that back off, when you pull them back off, you gotta kind of scrape it off because it sucks. And be careful because that shim that's in the middle, that's
It's
basically
sharp.
it's sharp and it will get you. It'll get you good when you start to pull that off. God, believe me, I know. I've got some scars from it. The first time I used it.
I love Rumflex gaskets.
Yeah, yeah. They were talking about no gasket. Twisted Mopar Garage. I've used red high temp sealer. Never an issue. I use the copper.
I've never
really-
used RTV. I've
Oh.
never used it on an exhaust manifold gasket ever.
I used it when they basically at the flange. I never put it on the head to the header. I always just did it to the flange, the 3-bolt flange ones. Yeah, I used to blow those things out all the time, especially when you ran N2O, like nitrous. It blew those things. It would just melt those things, like literally.
Go down to Michael Schmidt.
Okay. Boom.
Old school fuel and oil NPT fittings. What are people using to seal them? What do you
Teflon tape.
use?
I use Teflon tape.
That's all I use on them. And because I've tried the liquid sealers that you put on there and you let them dry,
Nope.
oil and fuel will break that down. And it will
100%.
start leaking like a mad bastard, right?
You know
It's
that I ran
Teflon
out of
tape.
I ran out of Teflon tape, and in a pinch, I've used Right Stuff, the black.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it does work. It works really good, but you got to let it completely cure before you actually do anything with it. Now,
Right.
as far as on fuel, I've never used the Right Stuff on the fuel, but I've definitely done it on the oil for that.
I've always used Teflon tape, and that's my go-to anymore. If it's going in fuel or oil or pressurized hydraulic fluid, transmission fluid, it gets Teflon tape. That for some reason that sealant stuff only seems to work in, like, say, antifreeze.
Yeah.
Well, vacuum, of course, but anything that has a liquid in it that can actually break it down, and if for some reason it seems to be oil soluble, do not use the liquid sealants on oil or fuel NPT fittings. It's Teflon tape.
Yes, I agree. Clayton's Toolbox asking, where can I get the best deal on 31 spline Ford 9-inch axles? I have to shorten my differential trying to stay on my budget. Any tips on shortening the differential? I've got a really bitching kit. What was the name of that place?
I don't
that
remember.
PRI.
Was it
That
begin with
tool
an
place.
M?
Yeah. I
I'm
don't
gonna say,
remember.
like McWilliams or something like that.
Yeah,
So-
it was. I got. So it basically, it's a bar and then a few things that go in there, and you can really do it yourself. It's really simple, and it comes with all the everything you need. As far as getting the axles, I've been using Quick Performance, and they seem to work really good. And
They're very 9-inch centric.
Yeah.
Quick Performance is, but there is other options. I can't
Yes.
remember. There used to be one that everybody would go to. Was the go-to place for the cheap axles. It had like a little red logo. I cannot remember those guys. And then the next higher tier for cost effectiveness would be like Strange Engineering, right? They're going to have what you want, but they're a little bit more pricey. They're not too bad, but they're...
is it
can't-
Yukon you're thinking of?
No, there was a place that sold axles, had a red logo. And I can't remember what it was, and I had
There's
a set of
Mosier.
those. It was Mosier. That's who it was. Mosier axles. And
Now I have Mosier's in my 8 3/4, but I went with Quick Performance because they seem to specialize just in the 4 9-inch. So
Right. That's all they're very centric on 4 9-inch.
yeah. So work pretty good. So Michael Schmidt, RTV is for fish tanks. That's good.
Well, and does anyone know what RTV actually stands for?
Do you want me to say it? I can
Oh,
say
well,
it.
no. Well, let's see what our audience
Oh, okay.
thinks. You know, this is something that I didn't learn till 7-8 years ago, maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, it's an acronym. Hence the name. Hence the reason why it is in big. It shouldn't have dots, but it's an acronym, and we'll let it go. So, do you guys know what RTV stands for? That's a good one. Let's see if you guys can come up with it. All right.
Let's see.
Patrick is saying, here we go. And, oh man, blackjack headers. I took them over to my father-in-law's maintenance shop and surfaced them on the giant 16-inch disc sander. Perfect seal every time. Yes. Here's the problem, though, is that the first time you hit the nitrous on that, it would raise the temperature so fast, and that little quarter.
Yeah,
It
that
was like an
flange would bend.
8-inch flange. It would just
Those
work.
headers were fantastic if you bought them brand new.
Oh,
and
Buff Del Campo got it. First
Oh,
one.
does he get it? Okay.
Yeah, room temp vulcanizing. Yeah, vulcanizing. Yeah. Oh yeah. There was actually. Did anyone else get it before him? No, he was the first one. All right. And then while he's on here, Buff Del Campo, they're at 206 right now on subscribers. So I don't like to just, but these guys are awesome, man. Go and watch their stuff. I love to watch their. They're rebuilding a Slant 6 and they're making it run, and I think that's awesome. And so they're trying to make it to no names, so they're doing it. They got 50 videos up, 206. Go and check them out. Buff Del Campo. Let's go check them out. Anyways, let me go back up here real quick.
Tom Brown saying that Monster brand Teflon tape is even rated for steam.
What?
All right. Yeah. So you want to know how this is a Navy thing for you. Way back when, not too long ago, like 40 years ago, the ships used to be powered by steam. And they had high pressure and low pressure steam. Low pressure steam is the stuff that like you would see with a boiler at a school heating the radiators. High pressure steam was like 2,000-3,000 psi, and it's steam at like ungodly temperature, right? And they used to look for leaks in high pressure steam with broom handles, because if you stuck your hand up there and waved it around, it'd just cut your fingers off or your hand off.
Steam is amazing. It's awesome.
That's nuts, right?
Yeah, I know. It's awesome. It's that stuff. Twisted Mopar Garage is saying Loctite's recommended for hydraulic fittings air. Oh, yeah, Mosier. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, Motor
We were
Engineering.
Patrick is saying that quick performance to 8 3/4 for Jerry Racing. Well, there you go. And that's kind of where we're at. Oh, look at everyone got it. Room temperature. Yeah, vulcanizing. There you go. Oh, and perfect. Yeah, awesome. Buff, I just described. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'm not sure if Kim's daughter, girlfriend, wife, whatever, but they do an awesome job, man. They have a they have a great dynamic between them too. Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. Go check them out. Here, I'll pop it up there. Why not? And that's going to be the only time I'm going to pimp out. There we go.
Buff's channel. Yeah.
Well, I don't try. That's Mr. Wilburn. That's what Mr. Wilburn's thing. But check it out. There you go. Yeah. Here, and he's saying, what's that?
Gasolia hard set
What's that?
will seal MPT threads against anything, but good luck unscrewing it later. Yeah. Well, you don't want it to become one piece. Just put the Teflon tape on there. You can take it off.
Yes, right. Unscrew it. Now, here's the thing too: is that before I learned this, I was like, "Oh, put Teflon tape. It actually has to go on a certain way." I learned this back when I was like 12 years old, when doing my very first plumbing job.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Are you going to roll it up into a little roll and then stick it in the threads?
No, you actually got to put it on in the way that it's going to be screwed in, so that way it
yes.
pulls it tight. Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, I
It has
just
to go in
put
the
it on there.
direction of tightening.
Exactly. So I was putting it on there, and I was just screwing it on. And then as you were tightening it on, it was unpeeling itself, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was like 12 years old, and everything leaked. Even to this day, I can't stand doing any like plumbing. Oh, screw it. I'm not going to do it.
The one we talked about this the other day. The one I hate is the stainless steel braided lines. Hate them.
Oh, dude, I got cool tools.
I know you
love
told
it.
me you just lop it off and screw your fitting on, and it's like I've never had that kind of luck. I always come back looking like, I just went to give blood through my fingers, right? I mean, literally, I'll just be like, oh my god, all my fingers are freaking raw and just bleeding everywhere, and it's miserable.
I'm telling you, that cool tool, it was like $40 or $50 for the one. I bought the kit way back when for like, I think it was like $100 for all of them, and that goes all the way from -4 up to like 16 or 12 or whatever it is.
Buff says he stopped using Teflon tape and started using Teflon paste. No, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I tried Teflon paste on fuel fittings. Pfft, good luck. You'll never get them to stop leaking. Add Teflon tape, and then I figured if I had a reason to use Teflon tape at any place, I was just going to use Teflon tape on all of them.
Oh, hey, we're getting into something that I know about. Patrick, if anyone wants to do the fluid change on a ZF8 transmission, I have skills now. It's no fun, though. $400 in fluid and a filter at Mopar employee pricing. Here's the thing. It's not just filling it up. It's the whole process of filling it up, because you fill it up, and where the plug is at, it's right next to the catalytic converter, which is, by this point, hotter than the sun. So you have to put fluid in there, run it through the gears, and then you have to get a temperature, and then you have to pull that plug back out while it's running and keep pumping fluid in there until it drains back out a little bit. Close it up, go out and drive the car, get it up to operating temperature, which is about 190 degrees. Then you got to open that thing back up, pull the plug, put the fluid back in it, or open it up and let it drain out until it evens out, and then close it back up. Oh, it's a pain. It is
There's
no
no
fun.
dipstick level?
There's
Is it
no
an
dipstick.
exact level that it has to be, or else the thing will burn up or something?
It's very close, yeah, because there's really there's not much fluid. The pan is probably about an inch deep, and then the way the filter sits inside the pan, you have to change the pan and the filter as one. And the pickup is actually part of the filter and the pan as one piece, and then it's got an O-ring that pops into it. So it's no joke, and that fluid is like $30 a quart. Now, we've been kind of messing with them a little bit, and we found another fluid, and I don't want to misspeak here, so I'm not going to say it, but I think it's like a Motul 1 or something like that. But I'll figure it out, and I'll make sure to tell you guys next week. But it works really good. In fact, it's got about the same viscosity and shear point at the same temperature, and then when you get up to operating temperature, it actually works really good. So, yeah. So, yeah. That's one thing.
That new stuff I just am not into.
But I got to tell you, that transmission is pretty awesome.
It's a German transmission.
Yes, it is.
So when you see ZF in there, automatically you think Zergenfiegel or something. But
right.
that is a German
It's an
transmission,
aggressive
and so
name.
it's very how do you put it? German, over-engineered, very difficult to use and work on.
Actually, no. That's quite the opposite. I've built probably about 10 of these transmissions, and they're incredibly simple transmissions. They sound very complicated. Now the oil pump runs off of a chain. There's a few other things like that, but as far as stacking them, there's no bands. It's clutch to clutch, and then there's a computer in the pan, basically on the valve body, and it's got a lockup solenoid, and then it's got essentially a solenoid for each gear. It's that simple. And then all the valve bodies are kind of interchangeable, so you can do certain things. I can't give away a lot of secrets here, but they're kind of interchangeable. So you can take ones off of different engines or cars, like say a Hellcat or whatever, like say off of a 90 and put it on a 70. You can take a Scat Pack 1 and put it on this or that, and they have slightly different valving and slightly different this and that, but it works. It's an incredible transmission. We've been beating on it. In fact, I'm actually test driving the Charger right now, and this Charger I think has had 500 passes down an 8th mile track, plus 4,000 or 5,000 miles of driving, and by no means are these easy miles. These are engineers trying to break this thing. So, yeah, it's an amazing. It's one that's actually, if you were to put most of the transmissions through this kind of abuse, it wouldn't survive. Is what I'm saying, and that's a 4,500 pound car that makes like 600 horsepower. So it's, yeah.
And Danny Boyd saying, didn't Pantera's use a ZF transmission? Yes, ZF transmissions have been around for a long, 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 long time. My 94 Ford truck had a ZF S542 transmission, which is a manual, but it had been used in the Ford 3/4 ton lineup all the way since like 87, I think. And that was just manual transmissions at the time, and that was the transmission to have if you had a Ford product that you wanted a manual in a truck. And that was the one to have, because the other option was the Mazda M540 or whatever it was, and it's like a POS compared to the one that the ZF S542. Or later they became the S547. They put some more ribs on around the outside, but
Strengthen it up a little bit.
yeah. So the S was a synchronized 5-speed manual, 420 foot-pounds of torque, and the 547 was the 470 foot-pounds of torque capable.
No, mine is also a 70. No, that we put it was a 5.7 engine, and then we put a 6.4. I built a 6.4 to do some testing on it, but no, mine's a 70. And so it's an HP 70, and you can pretty much they can take a lot of power and a lot of abuse. Trust me. I've done it. This one's actually for you, Mr. Tom Brown. I'll let you go for it. Dallas.
Oh, that's not really a tech question. I just learned that Chevy used the nail heads in the 5859 Loadmaster school bus chassis. Very neat.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, when Nailhead Buick there was a couple places it was used that no one even knows. It was the starting engine for the SR71 Blackbird, right? So the start cart had 2 Nailhead 425s on it. That's the only way they could get that big rotor, the turbofan, to really spin up enough to fire it off. They were later replaced, I believe, by big block Chevrolets, like 454s or something. But you got to remember, it took up until the 90s when they could no longer get nailhead parts for the start cart that they replaced them with big block Chevrolets. So, but yeah, the nailhead, just like any of the other Buicks that I've screwed around with, are torque monsters, and that's why I like them. Is they're an excellent truck engine, in my opinion. That's why I got one in the Suburban, because it doesn't even the 400 doesn't even seem to care about you having a trailer behind it. Don't even notice. That switch pitch probably has a lot to do with that too, but yeah, that 400 is pretty happy with, and it's got the same bore stroke as like a 401 nailhead.
Yeah, awesome. Let's see, moving on down. Most of these are statements. Oh, Patrick's asking, Shane, are you using factory computer on the 8-speed? Yes, I am. But there is things that have been changed.
Hey,
So,
let me ask you a question here, because this crossed my mind today.
Sure.
You know how there's like a bazillion trucks, all the Rams got the 5.7 Hemi in it if you got a half ton?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how hard it'd be to swap a 6.4 into one of those and
Simple.
just leave it a naturally aspirated 6.4.
It's easy. We did it in the Charger. It's the same thing. It's literally the exact same thing.
Could you you'd have a half ton truck with a 6.4 in it? That would be just a monster.
Yeah, exactly. Because it would have the BGE block, which is like the Scat Pack block, or the same block that has that's in the Hellcat. It's the block that can handle X amount of power.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, Ari's giving me some praise down there. Dallas, your QJet video helped me a bunch. Thanks, brother. Hey, no problem. Yeah, share that wealth of information, right?
Right.
That's the whole idea. I got a couple of them out there. You know, those are the ones that are like every month I bank on those things. Not bank, because I don't really make any money off of anything, but those will turn me, I don't know, 2,000 to 5,000 views a month on just those videos.
Yeah.
So I need to keep making more Magic Quadrajet videos.
Right.
Yeah.
But as far as back to your truck thing, that popping a 6.4 into one of those trucks is really the only thing is the computer, because the parameters are slightly different, and that's the only thing that we had to change is changing the computer.
Well, I was just wondering if you could just use a 3/4 ton truck computer, because virtually the body control module and everything would be the same. The only thing you're looking at that's different is how many lug nuts are on the brakes. You know, It would have
Yeah.
no idea it's not a 3/4 ton anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And Patrick, I'm going to be just for everyone. I'm actually going to be at PRI this year. It was announced, so I'll be there Thursday. So when does PRI is what Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
Usually. Yeah, usually.
Yeah. Setups on Wednesday. So I'll be there on Thursday. I'm just going to be going up for one day. So yeah, if you know, come on by, check it out, and we'll talk shop. So look for me.
I won't be there this year. I will not. I will
You're not
not
going to
be
go?
there. No. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I'll probably be working a regular 9 to 5 or like every other Joe.
Yeah. Well, is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on down. Patrick's also saying one more time here, I would like to do an HP 90 swap in my half-ton Ram. I really don't believe that you need it.
Isn't the HP 90 the one that's in like the Cummins trucks?
Well, the 90
That's the
is...
Asian.
Yeah, the 90 is the one that's like in the Hellcats or anything that's making power, really is what it
Okay.
is. So, and it's got a different input shaft. I mean, there's a whole list of things that are slightly different. Well, actually, there's a lot of things that are different, but the valve bodies are same, and the architecture is about the same. But as far as the pump, it's got bigger pump bolts on it. The bottom, I think 7 are different. The top 7 are the same. There's like 14 pump bolts on there. So, I mean, there's a, and then the E-clutch is different. It's got more oiling holes on it. Everything's just bigger on the 90. So but you really don't need it. I think if you just do the 70 correctly, it should be just fine.
You see Ari's comment there. I wish I could make some money off of YouTube. Just enough to pay go-go dancers to dance around the truck to surf music. No more, no less.
Sounds.
I think
great
that's
idea.
everybody's infliction, right? Like, is there anybody that's not just making like $100?
Yeah, dude. All those things I got. It's like 140. I haven't even got to check yet. It still shows on the account 140 because they take so many fees out of it.
Oh yeah, when someone sends a super chat, I want to say like 30% of that or something goes right to
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah, all I'm going to be doing with that's just going to be feast money. So, so that's all it is. It's going to be for No Name Nationals feast money. So, whatever. Turbo Tom, I have a Ram 2500 6.4 Hemi at the shop right now, waiting for lifters. Yeah, that does happen. But that block's a good block. That's the BGE block. That's the good one. Mod 5. We're not really getting much of these coming through, so let's talk about where you're at with project. How's the
Dude, I don't want to say that on the air.
Well, okay. I'll
No,
start.
I went with my horrible. Okay, you got to remember, my life is in absolute turmoil. All right, and I literally am the worst mechanic at the moment in the world because my head's not right. So,
Are you going to spill the beans on the live? You're gonna do this?
no.
okay.
I just had one of those days. It's like nothing could go right. Yeah, I'll spill the beans. I drilled through my fuel rail into the actual fuel portion of the fuel rail.
Tell them how it happened. We've all been there.
Okay, well, I measured my drill bit. I put my tape at 3/8 of an inch up, right? So it was going to give me 3/8 inch cut. So that all I had to do was tap that, and I could put screws in it.
Sensible, right?
Okay, so I start drilling on the fuel rail, and it's aluminum, and it's a high quality aluminum, like say T7 7072 or something, high end stuff. And as I'm drilling, it's coming out as the curlicues instead of like bits and pieces, like cast iron wood or whatever. It comes out as big curlicues, and it pushed my aluminum, or it pushed my guide tape up. And I kept drilling. I'm like, God, man, this stuff is really hard. That tape is barely moving, And I just watched it, and then all of a sudden it just fell through into the rail. And I'm like, oh no. So then I got the genius idea. You know what? I'll just tap that, and I'll make a plug out of a 10/32 screw.
It's a great idea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I run the tap in there, and I'm like, well, let me take the end off of this fuel rail so all the shavings that went down inside, I can get them out. So I go take the end off, and I have the tap sitting in there. And as I rolled that over, I whacked the tap, and it broke the tap clean off. And then it's like flush, and it's 1032. You can't get anything on it. It's so small. It's such a small tap. And I tried for like an hour to try to get that sucker out. And all I did was ruin the fuel rail. And I finally just stopped where I was at before I like ruined it indefinitely. And I just took it to somebody and actually had them remove the tap and weld the hole up. So
I called him today, and he was leaving the shop.
yeah, I was like, dude, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. But it was like in succession. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I didn't touch another tool the rest of the day. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing anything else, because I figured the worst in the world would be like me trying to do something else and I drop something down into the distributor hole on my 427 cleaver motor or something dumb, right? And it's just like, I don't need it today. But that thing is coming along. It's a lot slower than what I expected, because it's every little thing has to be custom made and fabricated and cut and lined and drilled. And it's so hard when you're doing race car stuff, because you can't go out and just buy something off the shelf that works perfectly. And
Everything. I'm right there with you, Dallas. I misaligned my clutch and installed my trans like a brute Middle Eastern finesse. And tuned my pilot bearing sideways and cracked the case on my 3-speed.
oh, dude.
Oh, man, that sucks.
Yeah. That was how my day went yesterday, and I didn't touch a tool after that for the rest of the day. And I haven't touched one yet today, and I won't. I'm just taking a little bit of time to make sure I get my bearings straight and then go back after it. Let's see, I have
Right here.
the throttle bodies are done.
Okay.
I'm finishing up the linkage. I got my threaded rod from McMaster Car today. So I should have some kind of linkage kind of figured out, but I don't have the cable linkage from the accelerator pedal figured out yet. That's another whole thing that I'm going to have to either fabricate and make or something. I don't know. That's probably what I'm going to end up having to do. They don't sell this intake anymore, so they don't sell the linkage plates for it. And if they did, I found a picture of one online. It sits right where my fuel rail's at, so I couldn't use it anyway. So now I'm just kind of on my own trying to figure something out. And it is like I'm literally pulling my hair out with this thing. I am. But I'll figure it out.
Tom Brown's asking, Dallas, have you ever asked, I may have asked this before, but do you still have any spacers for the 215 intake on a 300?
I did one spacer, okay, and that was for Jack the Giant Killer 300. And I had taken the templates and see, I didn't send it to somebody to have them made. Well, I did technically, but this was supposed to be a one-off deal. I didn't know if it was even going to work. So I sent it to a schoolhouse where they teach guys how to run CNC machines, do machine work. And I sent the templates that I have to the schoolhouse. They put them in CAD for me, and then they also cut one set for me. And that was all I was going to use it for. Then I approached 50 different companies to have them made. The problem is, right when I did that is when the price of aluminum stock went through the roof. So it was looking like $300 for a set. Well, that's not saving anybody any money. If you do $300 for a set of those and then a $250 intake manifold, you might as well just buy one of those intake manifolds that was $600. So I didn't make any more past then. And this beginning of this year, I actually I sent the templates to a company called Send Cut Send, and they were going to make them out of phenolic. And then the only thing that was aluminum was the Valley Pan. And I really wanted to get rid of the aluminum. I wanted to make it out of Lexan. I wanted to make it out of 3/16 Lexan so you could actually see in the Valley Pan without having to take the intake manifold off. I thought that'd be cool.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Patrick, I got to tell you, man, I've done this. He goes, oh, man, I've been there. I dropped a washer in the head for the header on my brother's Roadrunner into the exhaust port. Yes, the valve was open. Off came the head in a 446 cubic inch big block Mopar. Here's how I got mine out. Is that it literally did the exact same thing. and I just happen to have this one magnet that is small enough that will fit through the opening of, like, say, a spark plug hole. Luckily, the washer was like a lock washer, and it would fit out of that. And I went in there and I rotated the engine over slowly, got it up to the top, and then since the spark plug's on that side, I just basically fished around in there, and I heard it go tink, and I was able to pull that sucker right out. Man,
Dude, I did one. That was
you've done the same thing?
I've done something worse.
Oh,
Worse.
no.
I had this guy. Matter of fact, it was. I don't think we did a video on it. Tony encouraged me to work on other people's projects to get them going because
Beautiful.
Yeah. So it was like guys didn't know how to do carburetors or distributors. Well, a guy called me. Hey man, I got this 84 3/4 ton, or no, it's a 1 ton. It's a dually Chevy truck, and they had like aluminum heads on it and Edelbrock Performer intake manifold, and I don't remember what else. But he was like, "Can you come take a look at it? This doesn't run worth a crap." Well, okay. So I go over there and I figure out that this thing has more vacuum leaks than it has non-vacuum leaks, right? Like, it is sucking air from every fitting, every hose, every orifice, everything that it could possibly leak air from. Okay? And I wiggled this fitting it screws into the intake manifold for the vacuum brakes, and the entire fitting fell apart into the intake runner, and I heard it run down the runner and into the cylinder, right? And I'm like, oh my God. And it was I didn't even know what the piece looked like because I'd never even had it off. All I did was wiggle it and it fell in there. And I'm like, oh my God. And I didn't say anything to the guy. He was standing right there when I did it. And I'm like sweating bullets, like, oh my God, right? And so I pull all this stuff. I said, yeah, give me about 2 hours. I'll take all this stuff off. We'll seal it all back up. I'll put some tape on the things that need to be taped. I'll fix the things right. And he left. He went back to doing whatever he was doing. And I pulled that whole thing like down. I pulled the carburetor off and everything. And when I got the carburetor off, I noticed that the way that runner was drilled with the fitting in it, that the only place it could go was down that runner, right into the cylinder. And luckily, I already knew it was open because I could hear it go in there and hit the piston. So all I did was take a nut, right, like a small 1/4-20 nut, and I flung it in that runner on a string, right? And it was, that nut is simple to like magnetize. You just whack it with a hammer a couple times, right?
Yeah.
Throw it in there, and I fished it out with a string. Same thing. I heard it. It just went down in there and tink, and pulled it up.
And it worked.
It worked. It got it out. I was impressed. And it was a little steel fitting on the very end of that thing that came off.
Yeah.
And that's all that fell. Yeah, that's all that fell down in there. But I flung it down that runner, and I could, jerk on it with the string until I could hear it fall down in that cylinder. And I got lucky. I was so lucky. Oh my gosh! But that was the first thing I worked on, and I think it took me the full 2 hours. And the guy came back over and was like, "Well, at least I'm not paying you by the hour." "Oh yeah, buddy. Okay, thanks."
Yeah, right.
But you handed me a pile of crap, and you expected me to make it work, But I ended up getting that truck fixed up, but it had some electrical issue that, man, he burned up some kind of. He told me, he said, "Come on fire one day." And I'm like, man, good luck, because when you would start it up and it would run fine, you couldn't shut it off. You have to go out and disconnect the battery, shut it off.
Explain this.
Magnetize with a hammer. You ready to smack metal with a hammer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Heat will do the same thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, you smack metal with a hammer, it'll magnetize it.
Yeah, and heat too. People don't know that. You grind on something, you get hot enough, it'll magnetize. Yeah, it's a small magnetic field, but it'll work.
Yeah, and you're only pulling like a little fitting out, right? Yeah. I mean, if you're talking like you want something that's going to hold you up, you got to get a specialized magnet for that, like a rare earth magnet or something. Yeah. But just something to grab something that's a little metal, like a screw, because I didn't even know what it was that fell down there. I knew it was small because I had to fit in the end of that fitting, but I didn't know how big or small it was. I just got lucky.
Yeah, this is something I learned a long time ago, and when you said it, I was like, "Oh, you knew about that too." Yeah, it's one thing I've always done. Okay, we actually got a little thing. Shane had my 225 slant cam ground by Oregon, 219 at 50 435, 110, not going racing, not expecting much over 4,500 are heavier than stock valve springs necessary. At 435 lift, what I would do, since it's a regrind and this is the duration at 50, typically no, because the ramp rates on that are going to be extremely slow. But you really need to ask Oregon Cam, because they're the ones that are going to tell you the velocity or the acceleration rate or whatever as far as the derivatives of how fast that cam is opening. On a regrind cam, I can tell you right now, it's going to be really slow because you can't just create area. You can only cut what is there.
Right. Think of it as it's going to have a similar ramp rate as what your factory camshaft did.
Yeah, and for you to create any more duration, the only way to get that is to take it from the base circle if you're going to create more duration. Because remember, these things are like 180, I think, or 170 was the duration at 50. 219 at 50, that's going to be healthy. That's basically what I'm running. Mine's on a 108 LSA, and it makes really good torque right off the bat. So, and you're not going to, 5,000 RPM, 4,500, it's really all over with it. After that, you're really just kind of spinning the RPM. It really comes down to cam and what kind of headers you're running. But this is going to be, I've ran stock valve springs on these, and it runs just fine. But,
Dude, Michael,
I would, huh?
I was looking, Michael Schmidt just sent us a super chat. He says, $6 for a new cheap hammer.
Right, thanks.
That's so funny.
But thanks, Michael, for that. But on Stagger Proof, on this one, I would call them up and ask them. But usually the stock springs are going to be fine. As far as specs, if I had to just, use my my crystal ball on this one, I would say somewhere between 70, 90 on the seat. I wouldn't be much over 200 over the nose. That's pretty close to being factory. It really comes down to just ramp rate. And you're not going over 4,500 RPM, so you should be fine. So, yeah, once again, thanks, Michael. That's awesome. I love that.
So I can magnetize more stuff, huh?
Yeah. But, man, I just, this is actually a really good cam, man. And I love the lift on that, too. I typically, most of the Masters I have are set up to 450 as far as the actual lift, because by the time you factor in lash, then you can get that 435 at valve lift. But that 219 duration at 50 and the 110, that's going to be nice. You're still going to pull decent vacuum. My 108 is a little tight for most people, but I like that because I want that instant torque. So yeah, this is going to be an awesome cam. You'll love it. Be happy. Super happy. Tom Brown, Buff, I was already subscribed, so I just subscribed from another channel. Really hope you and Kim make it to the No Name Nationals. Yeah, that would be awesome. Here's the thing: if you guys make it, you have to drive that car. That's the, you know what, Dallas? Let's ask Buff if that's the one. Is that the one that you got from Uncle Tony? Is that the one? Is that what you were saying that he got that from?
The gold one?
Yeah.
Isn't that the Miss Landy? What do you call it? Was Mrs. Landy, I think?
Buff, like is that the Mrs. Landy car that he's talking about? I watched some of the videos. Actually, I've watched them all, but I was kind of binging them the other day, and it's a pretty clean. It kind of reminds me of a Southern California car, an Arizona car, Oh, he says the Buff Del Campo says they'll be there regardless, but I would like to see them make it. That would be awesome.
Okay.
John Wilburn, if John Wilburn's here, have them on one day on your channel.
When Terry CH is saying had some wheel bearing races, hub inserts, whatever was the proper name, magnetized them after drifting them out of the hub. Yeah. When you smack something with a hammer, usually if it's a good steel, they'll usually hold a magnetism or a magnetic field for quite a while.
Yeah, for a little while. Yeah, exactly. Tom, tech. How accurate is it to time an engine with a vacuum gauge versus a timing light?
Ooh, I've never timed one.
Well, you could just go by max vacuum.
You can, but what you'll find is the more timing you put in it, the more vacuum you're gonna have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you'll get to a point where there's but that's only going to be at idle. You're not going to check anything as far as really where it matters once it comes off of idle. So,
I don't know. I used the vacuum gauge and a timing light. I'd set the timing with the timing light, and I used the vacuum gauge for peak efficiency. so I can determine if the carburetor is adjusted correctly, especially idle mixture screw stuff.
Yeah. I'm a timing light person.
Oh.
I'll time it. That's just, I've got one, and it's, it's got a little digital thing on it, so it's just easy for me to do that.
No, I'm just looking at Danny Boyd saying Mrs. Landy is the white one that Tony still has.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so yeah, I couldn't remember which one they got. It was the gold one, I think, that they got.
Ah. Yeah. So, from Tony. Oh, here. Right here. I think it's the later 60s car you got from one of Tony's friends.
Oh. Oh, okay. There's that. Oh, is that one of Stubby's car? That's Stubby's car, right? The one that's supposed to have the turbo slant in it?
Oh, yeah. Whatever happened to that guy? They were going to make a turbo slant. I was actually watching that. I typed in turbo.
That guy is kind of what started all the whole animosity amongst everybody thing.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't remember, it was stealing stuff. I don't remember. That's where it all started. And then that dude got axed. And then shortly after that, everybody got axed.
Oh, he said he bought the car from Stubby. Oh, so there you go. Yeah, you're right. Oh, Aaron's got a question here. Tech question. I'm putting a 1964 with a 413 with the original closed chamber heads, 1953 Chrysler hardtop, 3,800 pound, 4,000 pound car. I want to cruise at 80 miles an hour, about 2,000. Any recommendations on a cam? Yes. I would, when you're going to be cruising at about 2,000 RPM, obviously, you're probably just going to have a 4-barrel on it. You're probably going to run factory manifolds on it. I would be in the, I wouldn't be anything bigger than the 220 as far as that. That way it kind of gives a little bit of sound. But 217 to 220 duration of 50 on the intake. Add maybe 5 degrees on that for the exhaust. But on a 112, it'll have a little bit of that muscle car sound, but it won't be radical. And with a 413, they'll eat that up all day long. And 2,000 RPM, that thing's going to be just
Right in its power band.
Yeah, right in its power band.
Yeah, it'll be happy at 80 miles an hour at 2,000 RPM.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, we're here. They got Stubby's car, and that was the brownish 66 start. Okay, gotcha. See here. Any tips on a rear gearing for the late model Chargers with the 5-speed auto significantly was optioned with a 3.6 V6 car? I like that. What was it, the 306 gear? I think that 306 gear, they have a 262 and the 306. A lot of people you'll see them selling their 306 posies really cheap for the late model Chargers. So I would just go for something like that. 5-speed auto. I'm not sure what the first gear is on those things though. I think it's like, I don't know. Let's see here.
Oh, so Buff is saying that Stubby wasn't in that mess. He had a new son and was working some long hours. Oh, well, fair enough. I didn't see him after everybody took the shillelagh and then exited stage left. And I've assumed that he probably got axed than that whole group did,
Yeah, transmission gear ratios. Now, basically, the first gear is really what's going to tell me. It's a 4.7. Oh no, that's the 8-speed. I don't know. Can't find it. Can't find it quick, so I don't spend any time on it.
All
but
right.
I would be at the 308.
So Michael Schmidt saying, Ben Alameda says he uses a hidden vacuum pump to evacuate the engine block to increase power.
Yes.
Can you explain? Can this be done without a vacuum pump like PCV, header vac lines, or question mark? This is an old school street racer trick.
Yes, I run into header vac lines now. How I did mine differently is that if you buy the evac system is what they call it, they tell you to put the line in perpendicular to the tube. I didn't do that. I put mine in so that way it goes in and it goes in the direction of the exhaust. So that way it goes in and goes back. So that creates a much higher vacuum on it. Now, the only problem with that though is that sometimes they have been known to create more vacuum than say 20 inch-pounds. And then you'll actually start sucking oil from, that's when you have problems with like sealing or rings or whatever, and you can actually...
On gaskets. Doesn't it suck the valve cover gaskets in?
it sucked the valve cover gaskets in. Then you start having problems with the oiling on the pins, on the pistons and whatnot. But I run that, and then and it works really good. And what you're doing is you're just creating you're trying to keep the ring flutter down, and you're just creating a low pressure
Right, it's
inside.
creating a vacuum on the back side of the ring, on the
Yes.
bottom side of the ring, right? So it sucks them tight into against the cylinder bore.
Yes, exactly. And on mine, I have ports, piston, ring ports on mine, so it's going to
Gas
help.
ports.
But yeah, gas ports. I'm sorry, I have gas ports for the rings. And what this does is it basically allows that. Now on a vacuum pump, that's actually works better because that way it runs basically off the engine
Well, it's consistent.
and it's consistent. Yeah, mine's only when it's really making RPM. And since I was cheap and couldn't really afford anything, I had to make it myself. So that's why I run the header vac lines.
Well, that's the cheap and easy way to do it.
And it works.
The hidden vacuum pump thing used to be a street racer trick where essentially it wasn't hidden at all. It was in plain sight. You were in California, right? That had smog requirements. Shane, did you freeze up? No?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. So when you open the hood and you see a vacuum pump, it wasn't. Okay. When you open the hood and you saw a smog pump, okay, a smog pump pushes air into the exhaust system so that it burns up the excess fuel in the catalytic converter. But if you run it backwards, it's a vacuum pump. Not backwards like you turn it in the other direction. What you do is you take the intake line and run it up to your PCV system, and then you take the air out is just a air out. You don't put it into the exhaust, and it'll suck air on your crankcase. It used to be a cheap trick to do with the smogged out 80s cars, is to use that smog pump and draw air from the valve cover, and that was the cheap way to make 20 extra horse.
It works.
It does.
It really does. Yeah, it works. It works awesome.
But those smog pumps are only good for about like 4 to 6 inches of vacuum, right? What you really need is they have and that was only like a single vein pump, I think is what it was, or something like that. They have like multi-vein pumps, like 4 or 6 vein pumps that you can buy from guys like Moroso and stuff, and that'll be a consistent vacuum pump. But it is run off of the engine. Now you can make a electric one. It's not that hard to do, right? But you do need a high-speed electric motor that runs off of like 12 volts.
Yeah, and then it's going to create a draw. So that's the reason why I wanted something that was easy, cheap, and that I could fix myself if needed. I could just go and get some hose.
The header evac stuff is like the simplest thing. It actually works off of the same way a Venturi works, right? With a carburetor. Now, when Shane was saying he lays his down, see, they tell you put it in perpendicular, and then the flow across it is what's going to create your vacuum. But if you lay it at an angle, okay, and let's say the air is going this way because my finger's pointed that way, the more surface area that you have, and at an angle, it's going to have a larger opening, the more vacuum it's going to create, right? So, and the faster that you rev the motor up, the more vacuum it does make, and that's the only issue with that header evac system. Really what it needs is like an expansion tank off to the side and then a regulating valve to where it just pulls, like, say, as soon as it gets up to 10 inches of vacuum,
it stops.
It's right. Yeah, that's it.
And that's the only problem I've had with mine too, is that I will start to create a leak on my rear main seal because of that thing. Even though I run a double rib on it, they have the twin lip, it still create a leak on it. And I still haven't really, it's mostly a race car now, so it's not really a big deal. But when I was driving it on the street, that was a pain in the butt. I got really good at changing the rear main seals on those things because it just created a problem. And then once I started laying that thing back is when I started having issues, but I was running nitrous, so I had to have it, And then I was running that EGR, I forget what it is. It's it's like it's a diode basically. So it's like a one-way valve for the air. So that way, if it backfired, it wouldn't go back up in there. So, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So Ari's asking if my Quadrajet is smog era and has provisions for a couple lines off of a smog pump. Would not having said lines cause an off-idle stumble? I'm trying to think, because I don't think the smog pump had any lines going to the pump itself from the Quadrajet.
I think that's just going to be his evap system. It could just be an evap deal.
I don't think any of them went to a smog pump. The smog pump would have had larger lines and one would have went to the catalytic converter. The other one would have been, for computer controlled stuff, it would have a solenoid in line for the inlet side.
Yeah.
And that's what would turn it on. It would run all the time, but it'd be under vacuum the whole time. And then that solenoid would turn on and allow it to draw air.
38 POS racing. I tried the evac on my 45 Olds figure 8 car. Emptied about five quarts in about 5 minutes. Yes, that's I actually forgot to tell one thing on that. Is that here's the thing: is that I run a lot of baffling on mine, so there it has to go through a baffle, and then it's got
like a filter.
Steel wool. Yeah, literally. Yeah. So I welded in a baffle. It's got steel wool inside there. And so it actually has to go through a baffle, steel wool, and whatnot, and everything. And then I try not to rev it until it gets to a certain temperature. And I can usually tell by how the oil gauge will start to bounce around. And then I start to run it. But yeah, it will do that. Luckily, I've had pretty good luck with mine to where it hasn't blown any oil into the exhaust by doing that. But I did have a problem with that for a while. In fact, I have. Someone's got a set of 40 series Flowmasters out there that literally were, you would take them off and you could pour the oil out, because I didn't know at the time. I thought Flowmasters were like, they're the Flowmaster, they flow awesome, and they don't. And so it was creating all this back pressure. So it was actually
they flow great. I love it.
It was putting, well, they sound awesome, but that's about it, you know. So it's 8 o'clock. We normally do a hardcore.
Before we do that, here's some more of that 38 POS Racing saying that the smog pump might have had a vacuum diverter valve, and it could have.
It could have,
based on how much vacuum we're pulling, it would turn on the smog pump.
Could be.
And if that's the case, those lines, if they were running from the carburetor and you just plug them off, will have no effect on it whatsoever.
Yeah.
None. It's just using vacuum to operate things.
Dan saying that, so diverter switches from the heads to the exhaust converter. Yeah. Oh, and back. So this week on Hardcore Tech at 8 o'clock, we're going to talk about something. And Mr. Dallas and I were talking about this on the way home, but it's going to be on points. Now, I know a lot of you guys love points. Now, I've ran points in racing cars, and in fact, I had a Volkswagen Bug that had a Mallory dual point distributor in it. And a lot of you guys swear by them. I have no problem with points when they're running in the capacity they were designed for the today's points, the points that you can buy today, right now. But when it comes to racing, I have my issues with them. But we're gonna actually, Mr. Dallas is going to field this one today. You feel up to it?
Sure.
Okay, so today's topic.
I'm just gonna throw this out there.
Sure.
Does anyone here know the real purpose of a dual point distributor? And I'll give you an idea. It's not for the faster you rev it, the more points bounce or stuff like that. That's not the case. What the purpose of a dual point distributor was for. And as soon as we hit it, we'll talk about it.
It's well, you know what? I'll play devil's advocate. Why, Dallas? Why do you need dual points?
Okay, so a dual point distributor was designed.
Someone got it. Someone got it right there.
Yes, that's it. That's exactly the answer.
All right.
It's longer dwell time. So you can only get so much dwell on a set of points before it just starts burning them up, right? The dual point was designed specifically so you could overlap the dwell period on both sets of points, giving it theoretically a longer dwell time. The longer dwell time allows the coil to saturate longer, and that way you get an increased and better spark. So
now, did you ever have any issues with the racing dual points?
I did. I had bought a distributor off of eBay, and I didn't know what a Mallory dual point was supposed to look like on the inside for a Buick, because, see, I grew up in an era where you didn't use dual points anymore. You used HEI, and HEI was like, better than sliced bread. That was the distributor to use. And so I never had messed with dual points. And matter of fact, Tony was the first guy I ever talked to that was doing the points thing still. And when I started putting the super stock motor together for the 63 Buick Special, it had to have an error correct distributor. And I thought, well, there's nothing more error correct than a Mallory dual point. So I bought one off of eBay, and it said, hey, this distributor does not work well. And I thought, how hard can this be, right? I mean, it's just 2 sets of points. And so I get the distributor and I set the points at 20 thousandths on each set of points. And I drop it in there, and lo and behold, it fires up and it will just idle. It will not do anything else. You can't rev it up. You can't do nothing. It will pop, backfire, fart, run like crap. I could not figure out for the life of me what was going on. And I mean, I had just set the points. How can it be off? So I took the cap off. I checked the points again. They were fine. They were at 20 thousandths. So I decided, you know what? I'll loosen them up, and I'll retighten the points at 20 thousandths and verify they're at 20 thousandths. So I did that. And what I found out was, since I'd never seen a Mallard dual point distributor before, because you got to remember, I'm working on a Buick, and a Buick does not come with a Mallard dual point. Nobody has Mallard dual points for a Buick. I had to search high and low for a long time just to find one. And it was missing half the parts that hold the points in place. Like there's 2 sets of screws, and you loosen one up and they pivot on a certain point inside there that has a screw that's actually offset ground, so you can turn that screw and it backs it off and moves it closer and all that stuff. It was missing all that junk. Somebody had taken it all out, and they felt it ran better with all that crap gone. Well, guess what? It didn't. So I ended up realizing that it was missing too many parts inside the distributor that I didn't. When I pulled up pictures, it's like, man, I don't have any of that stuff. So I actually found a 455 Buick dual point distributor, and it had never been in a car. It never ran. So I bought that one, and it came with the instructions. It came with the original gappings on it. It came with the key to set the mechanical weight advance. It was a very good investment on my part. And then I ended up just taking the gear off the 350 distributor, putting on the 455 distributor, and dropping it in place. But the interesting thing I found was one set of points is set at like 17 thousandths, and the other set of points is set at like 21 thousandths. And it's all based on the overlap, right? And that's what it's for. It was interesting, like when they told you in the instructions how it worked and why, and I thought, man, that is interesting. I knew that it had been for dwell, but I didn't know that they'd have different gappings and different durations on the points. I just thought it was pretty interesting information.
And here's and while we're talking about that, I have all data on my phone. I'm sorry, on my computer. So I just happened to look up because I was trying to remember, and I want to make sure I said it correctly. But for slant 6, like a 170 with an automatic and or standard, it is and a 225. It is 42 to 47 dwell angle, and the point gap on that is 20 thousandths. And then I was remembering, how did I used to set those? And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It was the matchbox.
The matchbook.
It was a matchbook. Yeah, I used to cut it, put it in there, and that came out to just about 20 thousandths thick. Back when you could actually just get them at any restaurant. Remember that? I used to keep them in the glove box, so I had to change points. I kept points in the glove box, so just in case I had to change them.
And here's Mr. Wilbur flying in to save the day, saying the difference between points and electronic is the size of backup parts box in your glove compartment. And
that's what I was just saying.
Right, when you were saying it, he had that up there. He just put it up there. And what's funny is, like, I was always the same way, because, see, I was always an HEI guy. So what you kept was a module in a box. Mm-hmm. And then when it got to be Ford TFI stuff, you keep the TFI module in the box. And the box just kept getting bigger and bigger. And the points, you just have that small little point setup that you'd buy at the grocery store. I remember being at the grocery store and getting those things. They also used to have transistor testers at the grocery store for you young folks. But you would take your, or not your transistors, your
ignition module?
Vacuum tubes.
Vacuum
tube testers. Because the old original color TVs used to have a tube for each individual color. Mm-hmm. And when they go bad, you just pop your tube out, take it to the grocery store, you test it, and then you buy a replacement tube that had the same part number on it from the shelf.
Yeah. It's funny that John put that up there because this is literally it. When I had points, it was a ballast resistor, some points, an extra coil. When I went to an ATI system, it's HE module, coil, and I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, and I kept a spare coil because of the module is like a Ford coil that goes to the top, so it's an OmniSpark part number, and so there's really not one in any part, so I keep an extra coil wire. So yes, he's absolutely correct. With the points, it's a lot easier because it was literally just a little tiny box. It was. We were talking about this too. I actually have brass shims. I have brass feeler gauges just for points. Yeah.
Let's see. There's something I missed here earlier, and I saw that he had asked it. Tom Brown was asking. Okay, does anyone know if the bolt spacing from a trans to bell housing on a Muncie 3 through 5 speed, the same as a top loader 420 or 465 trans? That I don't know. That's way outside my realm there. I would tell you right now, I do the Muncie 3 to 5 speed stuff is you can use oh my god, I'm drawing a blank. You can use the T10 or any of the Borg Warner stuff will bolt up to that same pattern. But I don't know about a top loader 420 or 465.
Yeah, he was actually asking this one too. He goes, I have both the 420 and 465, but I'm looking to put a BOP bell housing on it. So I was actually, while you were talking about it, I was actually looking where.
Well, I do know that the Lakewood, I think, is drilled for both of those.
Oh, okay.
Is drilled for multiple trans, to bolt them on.
John Wilburn, since you're in here, and I'm not trying to shift gears here, but this is the first time I've seen you here. So you need to have Buff Del Campo on your show. He's got like 200 subs right now. Actually, let me refresh here real quick.
Let's see. Terry CH is saying, are all 5-pole HEI modules the same? Far as I know, yes. But I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think. What is 5-pole? Aren't
The
they
5-pole
4-pole?
No, they have a 5-pole. There's I don't know on that one on the 5-pole because I run the 4-pole on mine because that's all I need. I just got to look at it so that way I can answer this.
I know the HEI modules are interchangeable from as long as it has the same number of pins that you need, right? They're all interchangeable. And matter of fact, you can actually take some of those. Like there's a 7-pin. I don't know if there's a 5. But I know there's a 7-pin one, and you can actually run it in a 4-pin configuration, but you have to do a jumper between two of them.
Yeah, I don't know on that one. That's something that's beyond. I've only ran the 4. I do know they make a 5 though because it's a funky looking thing.
Danny Boyd saying, "What's the point of brass feelers for ignition points? No pun intended."
Oh, magnetic, so they don't stick. Yeah, because they'll stick, and it's. And I was just telling him today I bought these for my Mallory dual point, and I never really used them again because I found it was much more accurate just to set them with a matchbook and then set up the dwell and then just do it by dwell, and it really came out really easily.
So Lout Burns is asking, speaking of dual points, how does the Mallory 4-lobe distributor work? It has dual points, but only 4 lobes.
They time them.
If it's for a V8, 4 lobes, you would get 2 sparks every time, right?
Well, yes.
I would think. I don't know. I think it'd be for a 4-cylinder if it has 4 lobes.
Yeah. But no, I think it was timed correctly because it's on. Yeah, you're right on that one. If it was a dual point, at that point it would just be a point for each one, and it would just be timed at a different time if it was a 4-lobe. But it would have to have 8 lobes on it for it to be a dual point. That's where it's staged, like we were talking about. Rick Salmon saying, Shane, I've ran the Mallory dual points on my VW for 50 years with no problems. You're absolutely right. I agree. Mine was a race car. Once I got over 6,500 RPM, That's what I was telling him. I started having issues with it. It
Breaking
worked
up,
great.
yeah.
Huh?
They're breaking up.
Yeah, it'd just be breaking up. Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. Michael Schmidt saying for HEI modules, there's a good YouTube video that explains all the differences in the modules based on pin count.
Oh, there you go.
Well, that might be worth watching. That might be the next one I watch. And if I watch it and I get a good idea, I might just make another one just like it so I could pirate all that guy's money. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
Yeah. I've only done one HEI video called HEI WTF, right? And I think that's what it was called. No, I've done two. I did one where I figured out that the magnetic pole, the polarity on those, on the magnet at the top on your pickup coil, where it has like the 8 points. I found out that polarity actually means something. I got one with a reverse polarity and it wouldn't run. You could not time it. It was all over the place. I couldn't figure out for the life of me what it was. The timing was up at like 42 degrees to make it to run.
Wow.
And as soon as you got in to drive it, it was just popping and farting and carrying all over. Like you couldn't hardly drive the thing. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? I got a brand new pickup coil in here. I shouldn't be having all these problems. And I figured out it was the polarity of the magnet was backwards. Instead of being north-south, it was south-north. It had been installed upside down. So when you flipped it over, well, then I found out that the Chevrolets are all like south-north. And Buick is north-south because it spins the opposite direction. It is, and it was like, holy crap, I'm unraveling the mysteries of time and space right here, trying to figure this out.
Time-space continuum.
Right. I was like, how am I going to prove that this thing's backwards? And then it dawned on me, no, opposites attract.
Yeah.
And, similar poles will repel each other. So I ended up finding one that was off of a Buick that this is right off of a 74. This was a functional Buick distributor. It's just the pickup coil itself, the wire gets bad inside of them. Mm-hmm. And I took that magnet and I put it on there and it was not attracting. So that meant it was repelling it. So that means the poles had to be exactly had to be the same pole facing each other, but it was the opposite sides. So it had to be backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jonathan Couchy's asking, Shane, if you had a choice between a good Poly 318 block or a 360 roller cam block, which one would you do? I'd do the 360 roller cam block. They're good for an easy 450 horsepower with just a right combination of parts. You can get decent heads for them. Everything's right there. That's the way I would go. If you want my opinion, obviously everybody has their own opinion on this. For me, the 360 roller is just, I mess with so many of those things. They're you could literally just throw parts at it and you're going to make 400 horse. You massage them correctly, you'll make 450.
Huh. Well, so Terry CH is saying that the 5-pole HEI modules were used on early 231 turbo engines for timing retard, which is under boost, and so that would make sense. I've never heard of a 5-pole, but I imagine they were there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that I thought the 5-pole was for a retard for emissions, but I wanted to make sure because a lot of people use those when they go to an HEI module. They'll run that 5th pole for like a start retard or whatever. That's what I've heard. But I didn't want to say that out loud, but that's what I've heard.
And then, here's Wilburn saying that the 4 lobes would work with dual points with a waste spark system. So you would have actually a spark that's generated for not needed, right?
Yeah. I was actually going to look that up too. I thought I saw one before I did one car where the points were literally 45 degrees off of each other. So with the 4 lobes, so it was basically firing a V8, but it was just so it was just basically alternating the loads. But then that would be a pain in the ass to do, because then you would have to get the dwell exactly right on all of them.
Yeah, 38 POS Racing saying that the polarity is sensitive on the wiring is polarity sensitive on the HEI as well.
Yes,
so it is, and it's also there is 2 different ones that I am aware of, and it's based on rotation, which way the distributor rotates, and they're wound the opposite direction.
Yeah, it's funny you say this, because when I first changed to the HEI and the Slant 6, I didn't have them right, and it wouldn't fire. It was showing spark all over the place, and then when I just changed the wires, it was perfect. And I was like, oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Yeah, but see, this was before the internet days. This was like in the 1990s.
Yeah, when you're trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah, when you tried to figure stuff out. It's not like you could just go down there and Google up HEI system on your car.
Well, and maybe that's something we should talk about because, see, all right, here we are doing this Tech Talk live show for you to get tech information like this. And way back in the day, the only way to get tech information like this was there was a guy named Marlon Davis that worked for like Hot Rod. That he would write tech articles, and they were just nothing but tech.
Always
right?
in the back, too. Yeah.
And he always did a really good job of doing the tech stuff. But the thing is like the tech stuff was generally, it wasn't so savvy on the electronic side. Like everybody was doing electronic ignition conversions, and they'd still be talking about tech on points and timing and fuel curve and basic stuff like that. And it wasn't until probably the 90s when Marlon Davis really stepped it up and started doing a lot of good tech stuff on rewiring things and making HEI distributor modules work in your Slant 6 Dodge, But most of the time it was like guys like me and Shane would you'd go just figure it out. And you're like, if you go to the junkyard, see, this is the cool thing about the junkyard in San Diego. In the 90s, there used to be rows and rows and rows and rows of 70s stuff, right? And you could literally go in there and get 900 HEI modules for like $2.50 because they didn't care about some piece of plastic. And they didn't know that they were $50 whack, right? So you go in there and get a bunch of these things and you take them home and try to make them work. And that's where things would get burned up, blown up, torched up. But you'd eventually figure it out. There's only a couple of wires, and one of them has to be hot, and the other one has to be ground, But it wouldn't take long, and you'd have something that was working, and next thing you know, that thing would be running around like wildfire, and then about a year later, it'd be in a tech article in Hot Rod Magazine from Marlon Davis. So,
yeah. How I learned, there was a guy down the street from me when I was a kid. He needed a lot of land speed records, and he used to build his own engines and stuff. And back then, the hot ticket in the 80s was to run the Mopar Gold box, like the actual, Mopar box.
No, I've seen the orange ones.
Yeah, the orange one's considered the performance.
Okay.
And then they had the chrome box, and then they had the gold box. And the gold box was literally the race one, right? And he said they were super reliable, and he would run them. They were supposed to still run with the ballast resistor, is what he said, but he ran them without a ballast resistor, so that way he got the full spark. But they would melt.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but he's the one that would showed me how to do that, and then he switched from the gold box to the HEI system. That was back in the late 80s, early 90s, and so that's where I picked up. He was like, you need to ditch all those point stuff, because that's when I was running points on stuff. He says, ditch that stuff, and then get you an actual HEI. So in the mid 90s, when I was car stuff. I couldn't afford an MSD box, so that's what I did. I put an HEI module, and I've been running it ever since. And then I kind of took a break from things for a while, and then all of a sudden, like, everyone's doing the same thing. I'm like, man, I learned that back in the 90s, and I had so much trial and error, and I didn't realize how crucial grounds were until I started messing with HEI modules, because they will literally burn up.
Oh, yeah, they'll catch on fire.
Yeah. Oh, Dallas? Okay.
Ari lives in San Diego. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
So,
really?
yeah, he's saying, where in San Diego was your preferred junkyard?
Pick your part, man.
Yeah, I wonder if it's still got any goodies. All right, so I'm going to tell you, if you're there right now, or even if you're planning on visiting, what you do is you take the 805 south, right? And when you get to...
Maine.
Is it Market? No, not Market. It's further south.
Wasn't it Maine? Wasn't it Maine?
It's Maine. It is Maine.
Yeah.
You go all the way south to Maine, get off of Maine, and then follow it to Nirvana Way.
Make a left.
Yeah, make a left, go up to the top of the hill and turn right.
Yeah,
and then it'll end there at the junkyard. You pick apart. But that used to have, out of all of San Diego, there's a million zillion freaking carne asada burrito shops. That place in the parking lot has a truck, and it's always been the best carne asada burritos, hands down.
But you got to tell them which one, because there's a couple places. So if you go up to the top of Nirvana, and then you go to the dead end, you make a right.
It's the pick
all
apart
the
with
way
the
down.
octopus on it.
Yeah, go all the way down, because there's two picker parts. There's the foreign one, and then there's the domestic one.
Yeah, you go to the
Go
domestic.
down to the domestic one. It's all the way down on the right-hand side. and that's where they have it. They actually have a taco truck out there. They have chairs. They have a little gazebo, and they have all the music playing out there.
And you can actually get your windshield replaced while you're in the junkyard in that place. It's like $100.
Yeah, exactly. But that was my favorite place. And then there was what was the one that was across the way from Pick Your Part? It was literally on the north side of that same road.
It's still there, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of it, but
it's literally across the street, and it has a really small parking lot and a really big yard.
yeah.
And what you'll find is it's directly across the street. I'll tell you what. Okay, I'll let something out of the bag here.
Okay, here we go.
When I first went to San Diego, I was at E1 in the Navy. Okay, there was flies flying around in San Diego, made more money than I did. Okay, and I had to live in like one of the most expensive cities in the world as an E1. Okay, so I had no extra cash. So I was always working on everybody's car whenever it was broken down. And then I found a part-time job. And the part-time job I had was at this, I'm not going to say what the place was actually called because it was crooked as all get out. Okay? It was a Ford salvage yard right down there on Nirvana.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
All they sold was Mustangs and Ford stuff. And it was me and an older black guy named Otis that worked in the back. And what we would do is we'd take the cars off the truck and you'd tear them down, take all the good parts out and sell them as a whole part, right? Like somebody needs a door and there's a whole door ready to go. But these cars were coming in with the ignitions jacked. And you're like, I wonder where this one came from, right? Here it is. This is 1995, 1994. We got a 93 Cobra on the Mustang truck. Right, and you're like, this thing was not sitting in no freaking salvage yard, right? You didn't buy this at auction.
No.
This thing is still new. It's got a warranty on it.
You can smell it. It's still new.
Yeah, and all the ignitions would be jacked. And there was a phone number that was about 4 inches tall. And it was probably, about 12 inches long. Engraved above the phone. Highlighted in red paint. Okay? If anybody came asking, you called this number and hung up the phone and left. Right? I'm not even lying. That was hey, here's your first day at work. Call this number if anybody asks any questions. And hang up the phone and leave. Don't even lock the place.
Just leave.
And but we would strip these Mustangs down and they would 13,000 miles on them. And they're like, God. That's how I got to know the Fox body stuff really good, was doing that.
Yeah.
But one day we were there. It was kind of cool because they used to have the Auto Trader would come out on Thursdays, right?
Yes.
And us gearheads used to be literally standing next to this spin around metal frame Auto Trader holder, right?
And it had gas station, yeah.
It had 50 Auto Traders in there, and it's one is domestic stuff, 1972 and before. Yeah. And then it'd be the next one would be 1973 and later. And then you had a foreign. Yeah, foreign one, then parts one, and then there was a VW trader, a bike trader.
Yeah.
But you'd be waiting by this thing a Thursday. Oh my God, they get here at noon, and as soon as every gearhead in town was grabbing these things on Thursday afternoon, and you're calling numbers in there to get a hold of these cars because all the new stuff would come out. Well, working at this Ford place. I pop open the Auto Trader. I just got it from down in the corner at the AM/PM. And I open it up, and there's a 65 Fairlane K-Code 289 4-speed car in there. It was $1,200, something like that. And so I told the owner, I said, hey, man, look at this. This shouldn't even be in here, and it shouldn't be in there for that price. And he's like, you notice, go load up the record right now. Here's $1,200. He literally pulls it out of his front pocket. Go get that car right now. And me and Otis went over there, and I poured gas in it, and he dumped a battery in it, and the sucker lit off, and it was clattering like mad. Yeah. And because it's got big solid lifter cam in it, and it was clattering, just hammering. And Otis is like, well, the boss man said pull it up on the truck. He didn't care how it ran. So we pulled it up there. We strapped it down, pulled it out there. The whole car was gone, and the dude flipped it it made $2,500 on it in one afternoon. Wow. And that's the kind of money that used to be running around available in those Auto Traders. because it was people that didn't know what they had.
Yeah. Or just wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was like, like the lady we bought that from, her husband had died, and he kept that car for 20 years in the backyard, and he died, and she didn't know anything about it. She just wanted it out, and it's like when they, he opened up, they had a picture under the hood, it had a picture on the outside. It was just like the crap you look like at Marketplace now, but Marketplace is what Auto Trader used to be, and it was only in Southern California.
And it was black and white pictures.
Yeah, yep, and it usually only had one, maybe two pictures. Right?
Yeah.
But it had a picture under the hood, and it was a 4-barrel on that 289, and I'm like, dude, that's a Keiko car. I know it for a fact, right? But yeah, it turned out to be a Keiko car, 65. It was a 65 Fairlane. It was the ungood-looking one, but it still was a Keiko car. And I mean, they look hideous. They look like something that literally the FBI drove in 1965.
John Wilburn saying, I've never been to San Diego, but I would like to go to both those places, Burrito Place and the Junkyard.
It's in the same spot.
So happens they're in the same spot. The entrance is right there. And we used to do that quite a bit. We had a group of guys that we would go on every Saturday or Sunday morning. On Sunday mornings, like, there was always, I think it was the first Sunday of every month, they had a car swap meet. So what we would do is we go to the car swap meet first. If there was nothing there, then we would just keep going south, and it was $1, I think, to get in each one of these places, and we would walk around, and we made a whole day of it, of just going around looking at parts. In fact, the lights that are on my 66 Dart, I got out of picker part off of a 66 Dart. The ones that are physically on my car right now. The whole thing's.
I was
$50 for 'em.
accused, like, okay, not accused, I guess I'm not putting that right. I went there to pick up a motor one time in 2010 or so, 11. And I was in school out in San Diego, and we were just there for a couple of months. So I was what they would call temp duty, temporary duty or whatever. And I was only there for a couple of months. And so I just came back from overseas, and I was trying to save all my money for a house. And I had this, it was a 91 Caprice Classic, or a 92. It was the first year of the Bubble Caprice, right? Wagon. And I pulled it in there to pick up a motor. My brother-in-law was swapping a motor out of like a Dodge Sebring or some, I don't know, Chrysler Sebring, Dodge Avenger kind of car.
Yeah.
And so we went and picked up a motor, and like I used to be the pro at picking the motors, right? Because it was great. I'd go in there and look at stuff that nobody else would look at. They'd go in there and like, oh, does it got the valve covers on it? Does it got the intake on it? I don't care. I'm draining the water out anyway. I'm putting the oil in. It doesn't matter to me. I'm pulling the cap off the radiator. I'm looking at how much crap and crud is in there, right? I pull the dipstick and smell it. Make sure it doesn't smell like gas, right? You make sure all 6 plugs are in the thing. You look at the tailpipe residue on it, right? Nobody ever looked at that crap, and you're like, man, this was a good one here. So we pulled it out with 2 seat belts, right? And lassoed it around that motor crane hoist thing they got, the A-frame deal on wheels. And I put it in the back of the wagon, and as I'm pulling the wagon in there to put the motor in the back, the guy's like, oh, are you dropping this piece of shit off? And I'm like, no, this is my freaking car, dude.
This is my car, yeah.
He's like, oh, you're hardcore, bro.
I remember picking up those engines and using the seat belts. Remember that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We get 2 seat belts, and you lap them around.
Yeah, that was so funny. Yeah, I remember that stuff. That was good stuff.
Oh, dude, and we would go in there, and it was like the cars I'd look for would be like, you know, at that time, this was, 2010, them Chrysler Sebrings and Dodge Avengers were freaking stacked like cordwood.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they were 10 years old at that time.
Yeah.
And so we went through, and I looked at every single one, and I found one that had the tranny pulled out of it, and the motor was in good shape. And I'm like, we're taking this sucker, because if we don't have to fight it to get the tranny out, it's literally like, bring the Sawzall, and we'll cut a couple lines and exhaust pipes, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it'll be out in
Pull
like
it right
minutes.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So while we're talking about this, where are you guys at on your projects as far as No Name Nationals? I'll give you a little update on mine. It's coming along. I haven't started it yet. It's going to be close. Let's put it that way. It's going to be close. This weekend I'm going to finish up the brakes and finish up the fuel line, and then hopefully drive shaft gets here, and then we go from there. But enough about me. What are you guys at? Where are you guys?
This is funny. Mostly old parts. And Russ Patrick here says, we pulled a 454 Gen 5 out of a van at Take Apart. Only 2 hours. We cut right up through the dash. I tried to leave this stuff for other people that was trying to get things. But, I mean, I've been known to do some very shady crank, just...
To get it out, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I went there one time, and I was getting motor mounts out of a car, and you weren't allowed to use a jack. How do you take motor mounts out if you can't use a jack, right? And it's like, oh, you know what? I'll bet you there's a spare tire jack in one of these cars. And I would look around until I found a screw jack, and I'd lift the whole thing up with a screw jack. And you want to talk about sketchy? Lay underneath the motor, taking the motor mounts out. Yeah, with it just teetering on a freaking screw jack.
Yeah, and you know they would put those tires. Remember there was the 2 rims welded together.
Oh, yeah,
and that was the jack stands. And then somebody would take one, so then there was like one in the front, and it was like this
teeter.
It was teetering.
Or what would happen? It would rain really hard, and it would wash out one of them, right?
Yeah,
and the car would be like, you go over there and. You just touch the quarter panel. It's like, like, oh man, don't take nothing off of this one.
Yeah. Oh, see, is anyone ready to go? Anyone? No. Just kind of seeing where everybody's at on their.
Everybody's just greeting each other from showing up. Bear Rose just came in and shattered the record.
Shattered the record for
high fives on his way in.
Oh.
So everybody was like, "Hey, Bear Rose, what's happening?"
Oh, right on. What's going on, Bear Rose? Awesome. Good. Glad you're here. I see Colleen's in here now too. And
yeah, Auto Salvage Outlaws was saying that my T-Bird is pretty sweet.
It is. I love your T-Bird, man.
You know what? I'm gonna try to. I want to be the only NA car in the 2810.5.
Yeah.
I want to try.
You know, it's one of those things that if I would have even had in my brain that you were going to bring that car, I would have left it alone, and I would have just said, you know what,
let's just race it.
No, I was going to just show up and do the 281050 Class 2. Why not? You know, just a low 6 car could do something in that. You know, as long as no one's running like 5.0s or 490s.
Yeah, so. Nobody's down there that far, I don't think. What's the word, Thunderbird? Yeah. Well, I'm working on it still. I got my gooned up fuel rail back today, and it doesn't look nice, but it is functional. And I'm going to drill another hole in it so I can put my fuel pressure regulator in there. But this time I have a little bit better plan.
Yeah. No tape and drilling through.
No more.
Man, I'm telling you, I've done that.
Oh, but I just felt so dumb.
But if my car's not ready to go, I'll either bring the green car or I'll bring the Charger. You know, that's our R&D Charger. Yeah, why not? I'll just put it up there and I'll just have people call me out. Why not? I believe it'd be on that day probably there'd be a high 7 car is my guess. Maybe let's call it like 8 flat maybe. So
man, Doug's was saying I need to take on the 2 hacks and Rowdy. You know what? I'll take on whoever at No Name Nationals. It doesn't matter to me, but one thing that does matter is, look, if I got you covered by the 8th mile, by 1/8 of a mile, it's probably not worthwhile trying to just even go race me. I mean, I don't know what Jeff's T-Bird runs, but you got to remember, like, I'm shooting for 590s. That's awfully quick. And for something that you can drive in the street, that's probably unobtainium.
Right. On pump gas, right? No, you're not pump gas.
Yeah, I'm running MS 109, but
MS 109, yeah. Oh, Bigfoot's and Mopar saying you can't fit those big 1050 wide tires.
I got 28 by 10.
Yeah, I got 20.
See, I've never been I used to run 26 by 8s. And now they call that, what is that called?
26 or 20, or did you run the 20?
8.5-inch Outlaw. Remember, that's what they were calling it on the West Coast. 8.5-inch Outlaw. I used to run 26 by 8s and was running 550s with a bunch of nitrous on 26 by 8s. But you want to talk about sketchy? That's it.
How much nitrous were you running?
I used to hit it with the 150 off the line, right? I spray it right off the line, and then I had a second kit that usually you would come on. This was back before the timers and all the delays and all that stuff. You just flick a switch. And as soon as it started settling down and you got about to the 60-foot mark, then you hit it with the second kit.
Yeah.
And it was another 150 or 250, depending on what I was doing that day. But then I started exiting stage left 302 blocks, and they did not like that second kit. And they really didn't like detonation was the big one.
Yeah. I never got to take my 250 kit to the track and actually get a real time with real tires. I really would have liked to, because I believe it would have been in the 550s. You figure the engine was 450 horse, 460 horse, and I was hitting with the 250 kit.
Oh yeah, then it was up there 700 horse.
Yeah, so it was right there. Now I didn't have a big gear in it. I think I was running a 391 gear because it was still considered a street car.
Yeah, I have 410 gear in mine. And I was also running a short 8. It was only 600 foot. So 550s is a little bit eluding. It's probably about a 620 to anybody else.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because I was going to say that. I didn't think my car was much faster than my blue car. It seemed fast at the time, but if I had to guess at real time at the track, it would have been probably 620, 630 car. It would have been pretty close to this one. But this car, when it was still a 3-speed, would launch so hard, just like yours. It was literally tires up, and it was like being hit by a truck.
Yeah, that thing was. It's always been that way. It's like the best way to explain it is like sit in an office chair and then have somebody hit you with a sledgehammer in the back, right? And that's what it feels like. It's just like, like wow, man, it's violent.
Yeah.
But and Tall Garages here saying, why build a 302 when the 351s don't crack in two? They do it too.
Yeah, they do.
But the 351s were still not so easy to come by. The 351s that everybody wanted was the roller cam ones, and they only came in 94 to 97 Ford trucks and vans.
Yeah.
And in 1999, 2000, those suckers were still on the road. It's a fairly new truck, and nobody was going to get rid of that thing unless it was crashed. And then, generally you're never the first guy there when they pull a crashed truck in with the 351 Windsor. No. The 302 blocks were super plentiful.
Yeah, they were like you. They had some people on the inside, and they would kind of pull out the good parts before it actually go up there.
Yeah.
There was so many times I'd go down to the pick your part, and they would have that little wall, remember, and you could see what was coming up on the lot, so you could kind of get a little look at what's going on.
Then they used to put that cover, that fabric cover over that, so you couldn't see those anymore. Because there would be guys waiting, knowing that they pull them out on, like, say, Wednesday morning, right? Mm-hmm. And they'd be waiting there. All right, man, I'm waiting, and just wait there all day till they pull them out. And as soon as they pull them out, the most disappointing thing is when you're the second guy on arrival when one of those 351 Windsor trucks hits the junkyard, because you'll walk up, oh my God, it's a Brian 351 Windsor, let me go get it. And you run over there, and as soon as you start getting up on it, you see the upper intake manifold laying on the ground under it. There's exhaust manifolds laying on the ground. There's 2 valve covers probably on top of the truck, right? And you're like, short block's gone. That's guaranteed it's the 351 Windsor.
PLS Racing's got a really interesting question here. Tech, with a 100 shot, will it yield bigger increase in HP on a healthier engine?
No.
Yeah, because now if you're talking like say V8 to V8, as long as it's a good operating engine, it's really because all you're doing is you're pumping in X amount of oxygen in with X amount of fuel into an air pump. So it really, if it's making 400 horse, it's going to be close to 100 horsepower. But really what the nitrous does is it really just creates a lot more torque because it creates tons of cylinder pressure. And that's the whole idea. And you're just trying to keep that torque, because if you watch a graph with the nitrous, it's going to spike way up, and then the torque's going to start to fall off the second the RPM start to go beyond that. But because you're creating so much more torque, that's the reason why you're creating much more horsepower. But usually, like if I were to put a 100 shot on my Slant 6, it probably wouldn't make 100 horsepower, just because the engine probably barely got 50 horsepower, 90 from the factory. If you put it on a hopped up Slant 6, you probably get closer to probably 90, maybe 100. But on a regular engine, yeah, you'll definitely get the 100 shot, because you're going to be introducing that amount of oxygen with fuel into the engine.
the ones that used to make the biggest difference on, if you wanted a big difference, like 100 shot, because all right, you could take 100 shot, go put it on my race car out in the garage, and you really wouldn't be able to feel the difference. I mean, it'd be a little peppier,
Yeah.
right? But if you want to know the ones that feel the difference, like a big difference, get a 70s motor, you know, low compression, dish pistons, and man, them suckers will. I mean, the ticket used to be for street racing is you'd go find one of them ragged out turds, right? Like something with like a 403 Oldsmobile. Okay, it's a perfect example. 403 had like 7.2 to 1 compression. It barely ran. Okay, but it was just like a 400 Chrysler. They were real low compression. The pistons sat far in the hole.
Yeah.
The heads were decent on them, but the thing just didn't make any power. It had no compression. It was unleaded fuel. The timing curve was garbage. The carburetor was garbage. And you go through and you put like a Holley 850 or 750 on it, and you put a good distributor in it that's curved correctly, and then you add that 100 shot of nitrous. And you could easily throw up 150, 200, 250 shot on that sucker. If you could get the ignition to light it, it would go. And those were the ones that make the biggest difference. The smogged big small blocks or small big blocks or whatever you want to call them. The 404 Cleveland probably was the same way. I'll guarantee it.
And the reason why is because you're dealing with a percentage. So if the engine only makes 200 horse, or say 250, and you're putting 100 shot on it, you're adding 50% or more, or
Right,
you know,
but
right about there.
That motor, and what's deceiving about those things, they only made like 200 horse, but the torque number on them was like astronomically stupid, you know, like 450 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah,
Well, then
so
you
the
throw
cams
100
are
shot of nitrous on there, and now it's like 550 foot-pounds of torque, and you're reaching big block Chevrolet high compression territory.
Yeah.
Right? But that's the ones that would make the big difference because it'd be a monster coming out of the hole, and then they'd be all in at like $4,000. So you just short shifted the crap out of it.
And that's the reason why I ran the 391 gear is for that reason, because I just couldn't RPM them, so I used the torque of the nitrous to keep it going.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the whole thing. And there was actually a question down here that I just saw. Michael Schmidt's asking it. 100 shot. How do you get more fuel in at the same time, or do you just send it and hope for no volcano? No, they
No. It's a wet system.
It's a wet system. Yeah, so you'll have a solenoid of nitrous and a solenoid for fuel, and they mix on a spray bar. Basically, the top one or bottom one, whatever. Usually, it's the top one is going to be the nitrous, and the bottom one's going to be the fuel. And the 900 pounds of nitrous is going to hit the fuel and essentially atomizes it. Yeah. So basically, that's what you're doing. Now they do have dry systems for like fuel injected. So like on Dallas's car, you can just increase the amount
Nitrous.
of
And it's going to
nitrous,
add fuel.
and then it'll add fuel. So you can do that way also. So yeah, so it's just solenoid.
Us old schooler guys, you don't do a dry system. That's a good way to burn a piston, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So we would always go with the wet system, and you always you never leaned it. If it said it called for, let's say, a 65 jet for nitrous and a 50 jet for fuel, okay, you never went smaller on fuel. You never put a 49 jet in it. You always had the 50, or you were fatter than that.
Yeah.
That's how they'd live. But what you do is you find, Ari's down here talking about 400 Ford modified motor, which is not really a modified. It's actually a tall deck Cleveland.
Yeah.
Those things, I imagine, would wake up big time because they were same kind of smog turd as the 403 Oldsmobile, same as a 400 small block Chevrolet, same as the 400 Chrysler. They were just neutered for the fuel. They'd have pretty decent heads on them, actually, and the cam would be anemic, the timing would be lazy, and the carburetor would be lean.
Yeah. Jonathan Couch is saying that he saw a video of a guy beating a 6.4 Hemi and a 3.6 Pentastar car with 150 shot and 392 gears. Yeah, because you're just adding that much more torque. Plus that Pentastar, that's a really good engine, believe it or not, for what it is. They sound terrible, but they can advance and retard both the intake and the exhaust cams. It's a really awesome engine. I would just wish there was more support on it. But yeah, I mean, you figure that thing probably makes what?
I think they're 300 horse.
Yeah, 250 to 300 horse, and you add another. That's 450 right there. But that's horsepower. But imagine the torque. I think probably makes 400 foot-pounds of
Yeah,
torque.
you're adding 100. If you got 150 shot of nitrous, you can easily say 150 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah, or more. And so, and then with those gears, you're probably just. I mean, that thing's probably out and gone, and that 6.4 just can't keep up. Just can't.
Well, and,
catch
and
right
that
up.
3.6 motor probably weighs half as much as that 6.4 motor.
Oh yeah, it's all aluminum. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So,
Totally like.
let's see. 38 POS Racing is saying more tech, running vacuum advance. How much is too much? Stockish 1970s 454. Haven't heard any pinging. It's got 60 degrees total at 2,000 or so.
6 degrees total, so he's probably running. Well, it's probably a low compression engine, so he's probably running
Right,
good.
but that's a hell of a lot, man.
That's a lot.
Timing.
Yeah, I try to stay between 45 and 50, usually.
That's the rule of thumb used to be you start at 43 was the number. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. What's that?
Yeah, that you start. It's about 10 degrees. That's about 10 degrees. So if your engine's say 34 degrees of of total timing, and then you add 10, that's about it's about 44, 43 in that range.
Right, and remember, vacuum advance isn't doing anything performance-wise for you. All that it's doing is fuel economy. You going down the road.
Yeah.
So you're adding more advance to it, and you can do that because you have a very lean mixture and it's burning really slow, and the motor's at pretty decent RPM. Mm-hmm. A fuel-injected car probably won't have a fuel-injected car with an overdrive probably won't have this kind of timing curve in it. With this much vacuum advance. But no, Shane is right. 60 sounds like an awful lot. Mm-hmm. You can, if you're not pinging right now at 60,
it's low compression. Or you got a problem.
I'm thinking that maybe you're running too rich. Well, no, because it'd be pinging like mad, right? You might be too lean.
Yeah, could be. But I typically am between like say 40, 45 and 50 because that's usually about 15 degrees, just about a vacuum advance. But Dougster has actually got a really great question because I've ran these. Could a Predator car be run on this as a street driver? Found one for $50 on Marketplace yesterday. All parts available or just on eBay. Here's the thing: Predator carbs came in two versions. Well, actually, more like 3 or 4. They had an all billet version, and I don't remember the part number on it, but it was another Predator carb that literally had just an idle and then wide open, and then they had a third one that actually had an adjustable idle circuit. Now, the adjustable idle circuit is the one to get if you're going to drive it on the street. Also, too, on the Predator, it's very important if you're driving on the street to make sure that those leather flaps that are in there, that are the upper venturi, lay flat. And then you can adjust the spring inside the cover for when the flaps come back. They have to be tight enough to where when you let off the throttle, they come all the way up. Here's what I noticed with the Predator. I drove one of these on the street for a long time. Is that when you let off the throttle, you tend to not just come off the throttle. You want to let off of it fast, so that way it slaps closed and it closes those blades. Because that venturi, that thing that opens up, goes directly onto a cam, which then goes right onto like a metering circuit, and that's what draws the fuel in. Obviously, the farther it goes in, it goes out. And then they have cams for the circuit. You have an A, B, and a C cam. And then you have blank ones to where you can change it from there. And they're basically progressively more aggressive. I personally, from my setups, I had a Predator on a 400 cubic inch big block Mopar. It had good heads and a single plane intake on it. And I still had the A cam on mine. And I changed the spring. I put a little extra tension on the spring just for that reason. But I drove it around quite a bit. And I actually got decent mileage out of it. I was getting about 14 to 15.
It's a variable Venturi carburetor,
yes,
right? And Fords came with variable Venturi carburetors in like the early 80s. Oh. It was kind of common to find a Ford, like an LTD or a Crown Victoria, with variable Venturi carburetor. And I don't see why it wouldn't work on the street, except for the Predator has those big Venturis, right? The Ford had some little dinky, one. Ford had two little dinky ones. It was like a 2-barrel carburetor equivalent. But they would get really good mileage. And I think really what it was for was to get more torque out of that 302, mid part throttle.
Yeah. It would. It worked good. Like I learned from a guy. I'm just not going to say his name over the air, but um, I'm not sure what state of tune he's in at this point. But he ran a lot of them, and I bought one of them off of him, and I used to watch him tune it. And I rode around it, and I was like, man, this thing's awesome. And it was when it was tuned right, it was very easy to start. The idle circuit worked great. It was a great carburetor. So I say get it. If you get it, do a video on it because they're awesome carbs. Okay, man. Oh my God, we've only got 6 minutes left, man.
Yeah, so Michael Schmidt saying that 454s from the 70s are probably low compression, very low compression, like 7-1. I don't know if the 454 ever got that treatment. There's a lot of big blocks that did around that time. Gosh, it's just sad that like a 76 455 Buick is like that. And you're like, the compression was everything on that thing. That's why it was built around 10 1/4 1 compression. That's why the 70 model was, the 455 was technically the only year that came with that 10 1/4 1 compression. That's the only year that, in my opinion, that ran right, because it was designed for that, right? Yeah. And then when they started neutering them, good Lord, then they went to open chamber heads, and oh man. But those are the ones that love the nitrous. Love it.
I couldn't remember what it was, but yeah, it's the Ford was junk VV carbs are used on motorcycles. Mine was a CV carb that I had on my KLX, and I had a pumper carb on there. So it's like a constant velocity. It had a butterfly and then this vacuum gauge, so diaphragm. So as the vacuum would get higher, it would increase that, and you could adjust it and whatnot. But I liked the CV carb on my motorcycle because it's by air demand. So when I would go up in altitude, it would constantly adjust. And I think that's what they were trying to do with the carb, because if you were, like, say, in California, you could be at sea level and hit 6,000 foot 3 times. Yeah. So you definitely would like to have something like that. And that's what I was trying to do with the Predator was so that way the car would run great anywhere we went. And that's why I tried to, when I was street racing, either the races down there by in Chula Vista area, man, that was always the best, because you were like at sometimes
sea level.
It was like sea level or even below sea level.
The DA would drop below sea level.
Yeah, it would drop below sea level, so you're always faster.
Tall Garage is asking, what head should I put on a 5.9 Magnum? There's nothing wrong with the 5.9 Magnum head.
Did I miss it?
It's at 853. Maybe I'm too far behind.
Okay, Tall Garage. What head should I put on a 5.9 Magnum? Okay, it depends on what you're going to do with it. Now, Engine Quest used to make these CH318 heads, and they were super affordable. They were direct replacement, and they actually outflowed the stock Magnum head, and they were great. They were great for performance, for like a street performance type of deal. But if you're going to get, I just like the Edelbrock RPM Magnum heads. They work really good. They work really good for what they are. And if you send me an email, slantdaily@yahoo.com, I'll send you a couple of build sheets for 5.9 Magnums. Really simple over-the-counter parts that you can get and make really good power out of those things. 400 horse to 450, really easily.
So Michael Schmidt's asking a question or making a statement about that 60 degrees includes the vacuum advance. I'm assuming that does include the vacuum advance, but I cannot see. You can't even buy an adjustable vacuum advance that would be 20 degrees. I mean, that's a lot.
No, I saw one that was 17 degrees one time, but I think 15 is about it.
I have an adjustable one, and it only goes to 17, and it's like, if you got 60 degrees in there, and let's say you had the maximum, you had 17 degrees in there of vacuum advance.
That's okay, 43 degrees.
43 degrees of timing.
That's
initial.
Lot.
Yeah. Or, well, it's not initial. It'd probably be somewhere around. I'll pull 32 out of that. Oh, it could be the case. The weird thing about HEI and 70s smog era, if this is a 70s smog era 454, it could be super low compression. It could be somewhere around 7.6, and then the 70s style HEIs, the carburetors were so lean, you'd see that they'd have like 35 degrees of advance. you know, and it's because they were just so lean. It's just based on your application. But what I do know about Chevrolets is generally when you're looking at all-in timing, total timing, they're usually happy around 32 to 36 degrees. It doesn't really matter what Chevrolet, big block, small block, they're really happy around 32, 36 degrees.
Small block and Mopar is the same thing. 32
Is it?
to 36, yeah. There was one that, for whatever reason, like 38, but I think they just had to do because they had just crappy cylinder heads and whatnot. But
And it all depends on bore and stroke. But you're talking a 70s 454. It's probably low compression. And I still think it would probably be happiest around 36 total, right? And then so, gosh dang, you'd have, let's see, if it was at 56, that's 20. So you have 24 degrees of vacuum advance. I just don't think that thing something's not right. Maybe check your harmonic balancer, make sure it hasn't
could've
slipped.
Yeah.
That
And
just
also-
doesn't sound like it'd be right because at that number, that thing would be hammering and rattling so hard at part throttle, you could probably barely even drive it.
Yeah, and also too on those, those things have a 6135 rod with a 4-inch stroke, so it's got a really, like a 1.4, 1.5 something rod stroke ratio. But man, we've already hit it. You got anything else you want to plug? It's already been 2 hours, man.
No, not really. There's been, I guess, not a lot of activity happening on my end. I'm just trying to get this T-Bird done and hopefully get a pass on it before I even take it over to No Name Nationals. I bet the way it's going to work out is I'm probably making, I'm probably making throttle linkage bracket at the No Name Nationals out of gum balls and a piece of tree bark. Right?
The
But
string out the window, we pulling on it.
I don't know what's going to happen. I have a few things I got to wrap up and get done before we get over there. And big thing is, if you're heading to the No Name Nationals, be there with bring a few extra bucks and buy all this AHRA merch from me because I'm gonna fire sale it all.
Fire sale. Yeah, we're gonna have T-shirts for sale too. So and
Oh,
we're
yeah?
gonna be getting there probably. Yeah, we got a whole bunch. So we're gonna be there Thursday. So we're gonna get there probably about noonish, maybe 2ish Thursday. So help you guys set up. But if anything, only thing I want to plug is go see John Wilburn Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time. He's doing something today for the burnout, right? This
Weekend or this Friday.
Friday is at
He's got the burnout
competition.
contest competitors.
Yeah, so go and check him out, man. We're the time's a ticking. We're getting down to the time, and we're gonna have. We've only got like 2 more lives before the next day is going to be the event. So,
Oh, I probably won't be doing that live then.
no, I'll probably be doing it by myself. Yeah, because you'll probably already be there. So, all right, guys. Well, anyways, thanks for stopping by, and we'll be seeing you guys soon. And once again, slightdailygarage@yahoo.com. If there's something we didn't get to, you want to talk about something, or send a video, or whatever, or you have something that you want to do us to dive into for our hardcore tech, we'll definitely look into it because, this way we can, I know what I know, but I don't know what you guys don't know. So,
John's saying here there's going to be official No Name Nationals event shirts for sale as well.
wow, where was that at? I missed that.
It's John Wilburn's chat at 9:01. And hey,
right there.
now we're 2 minutes overtime, John. Thanks.
Right.
I expect your check to be in the mail. 2 minutes overtime.
Right. All right, guys. You guys take it easy. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for stopping by. You guys have a good night.
See you next week.
Yeah. Take it easy. And we are.